So someone just posted something completely unhinged on X. So it's like any other day really, but it has to do with Google and AI. So I really wanted to talk about it quickly. Basically, there's a post that I think is completely misinformed that's talking about Google's lack of AI adoption and how they're completely behind in the AI race because the software engineers at Google are not using AI. They're not using it. They're completely behind. They don't know what they're doing. They're coding like it was 5 years ago, completely by hand, and they're never going to come back. And Steve actually here, if we go to their post, they're basically talking about how Google has become the equivalent of John Deere, at least in the AI era. And so Steve mentions that all of this information comes from a conversation that he's had with someone who's his buddy, who's been a tech director at Google, according to them, for about 20 years. And so quickly, I just want to talk about the post that they have, and let's just read it so that we have the full context. Steve said that I was chatting with my buddy at Google, who's been a tech director there for about 20 years, about their AI adoption. Craziest convo I've had all year. The TLDR is that Google engineering appears to have the same AI adoption footprint as John Deere, the tractor company. Most of the industry has the same internal adoption curve, 20% agentic power users, 20% outright refusers, and 60% still using cursor or equivalent chat tool. It turns out Google has the same curve too. But why is Google so average? How is it that a handful of companies are taking off like a spaceship and the rest, including Google, are mired in inaction? My buddy's observation here was key. There's been industry-wide hiring freeze for 18 plus months, during which time nobody has been moving jobs. So there are no clued in people coming from the outside to tell Google how far behind they are, how utterly mediocre they have become as an engineering org. He said that the problem is that they can't use Claude Code because it's the enemy, and Gemini has never been good enough to capture people's workflows like Claude has, so basically agentic engineering has never really taken off inside of Google. They're all just plodding along, completely oblivious to what's happening out there right now. Not only is Google not able to do anything about it, they don't seem to be aware of the problem at all. I'm having major flashbacks to 50 years ago as a kid at La Brea tar pits asking why can't they just climb out? My Google friend and I had this conversation over a month ago. I didn't share it because I wanted to look around a bit and see if it's really as bad as all that. I've been talking to people from dozens of companies since then, and yeah, it's as bad as all that. Google is about average. Some companies at the bottom have near zero AI adoption and can't even get budget for AI. They may have some moats and high walls, but the horde is coming for them all the same. And then there are a few companies I've met recently who are amazingly leaned into AI adoption. And this is the part that I think is especially hilarious and interesting. One category leader company just canceled IntelliJ for 1,000 engineers. That's an incredibly bold move, one of many they're making towards agentic adoption. In my opinion, that company is setting themselves up for a huge W. So just remember that point. As for the rest, well, it's the great siloing. Everyone's flying blind with nobody moving companies. Nobody knows where they stand on the AI adoption curve. Nobody knows how they're doing compared to everybody else. Half of them just check a box. We've enabled Copilot/Cursor for everyone. Cue smug celebrations. They think this is like getting SOC 2 compliance, just a thing they turn on and now it's solved. And they don't realize that they've done effectively nothing at all because of a hiring freeze. And this is crazy to me. And so there's a few different points that I want to break down, but I think the first thing that I just wanted to dispel is the fact that like there is not necessarily this 18 plus month hiring freeze where no one's getting jobs, no one's changing companies. We know that's completely not true. That's completely false. If you even look at something like Meta, right? Meta has poached many different people to pay them $100 million packages so that they could focus on things like AI. And obviously, while maybe companies reduce their headcount or they decide like we're not hiring as many people, I think largely all of these companies, or at least most of them, have grown headcount over the years and still get people who go from a place like Meta to a place like Google. That literally happens every single day. Even if there is a hiring freeze, you might feel like there is throughout the industry. The other thing that's crazy to me is like these companies keep tabs on their competitors like it is nobody's business. So the fact that we're going to act like Google doesn't know what Meta's doing or Meta doesn't know what Google's doing, that's like completely wrong. People are constantly talking about what other companies and competitors are doing so that they can try to beat out their competition, right? Like that is literally business 101. You pay attention to what other people are doing to make sure that you at least have feature parity or that you're pushing as hard as they are or whatever. So like it's completely ridiculous to think that Google does not have tabs or insight or visibility into what any of these other companies are doing. That's just completely untrue. And maybe the funniest part to me of this is just that like the whole source of this is just trust me, bro. Like I have a friend who's been a director at Google, and while, I guess they probably don't want to say who the person is, that just feels insane to me. And then I saw this response too after, which I thought was really funny. So this is Demis, and Demis is actually the co-founder and CEO of Google DeepMind. And DeepMind is actually creating special models so that people inside of Google and outside of Google who pay for things like Gemini CLI can use their most advanced models to do agentic coding. So Demis actually replied saying, maybe tell your buddy to do some actual work and to stop spreading absolute nonsense. This post is completely false and just pure clickbait. And so that kind of comes into my post. So I read this and I was like, this is wildly wrong, at least from where I sit. And the first point that I thought was completely out of touch with this is just, why would you ask someone like a VP or a director, how do people produce code day to day? Because the reality is that they are so far removed from the process that they are not going to actually be able to tell you anything that's reasonable for what engineers do day to day. They're not the people who are opening up these different softwares that they literally build in-house internally for engineers to do their job. They are going to literally probably stare at a dashboard or even glance at a dashboard, like I said, that some poor soul was forced to plumb together so that some random director or VP can then talk holistically about what's happening. So to me, this really is like the worst possible opinion that you can get. It's like a giant game of telephone. The person who is the furthest link in the chain should not be giving you the detailed insights about how a software engineer who's on the opposite end of the chain is producing and delivering code. They are literally as far removed as possible, barring being literally Sundar Pichai, basically, so like having them weigh in on this just makes no sense to me, because all of the information that they're going to get is basically just going to be rolled up to them through a bunch of other reports. And all of that is just like a giant game of telephone. It's literally like asking the delivery driver how to bake the cookies. It just does not make any sense. And I don't think it should hold any weight. And so that was kind of hilarious to me. And the second part to me was this quote. He said towards the end, and there are a few companies I've met recently who are amazingly leaned into AI adoption. One category leader company just canceled IntelliJ for 1,000 engineers. That's an incredibly bold move, one of many they're making towards agentic adoption. And what's hilarious about this is that this person does not realize that they are simultaneously bashing Google's AI adoption while also praising another company with the example that they canceled 1,000 IntelliJ subscriptions. But what the person doesn't know is that Google sunset IntelliJ while I was there years ago, and they sunset it for all of developers, which means that they likely canceled well over 100,000 IntelliJ licenses for literally the entire engineering organization across all of Google. And that was done years ago. So again, I thought this was crazy. I thought this was hilarious. I really just wanted to talk about this. This is not to rag on Steve. This is just kind of like a crazy thing that I saw, and I could not believe this. And there's a lot of people, I think, in the comments who have a very similar sentiment going on. But yeah, this is kind of wild, and I really just wanted to talk about it. That's about it. See ya.